Nearly 2 months after the murder of Palestinian-American veteran journalist Shireen Abu Akleh, a US citizen, the United States government, through the State Department, released its own statement on the murder of Shireen and who they thought should be held accountable.
Our goal in this was not to please everyone. Our goal in this was not to please anyone. Our goal in this was to put forward what the US security coordinator had found.
Ultimately concluding that they could not conclusively conclude who committed the murder, but that it was likely Israelis that fired and committed the crime. And the accusation by the United States that it was likely Israelis that fired and killed Shireen is a conclusion drawn by all the other reports which were conducted into the murder. Except in the case of the other reports, they went further and actually listened to not only the material evidence on the ground and what that told them, but also the eyewitnesses who all stated that not only was Shireen Abu Akleh killed by an Israeli soldier's bullet, but that she was targeted perhaps, and that this was an intentional killing, regardless of whether they knew which journalist she actually was.
Military analyst told CNN that the nature of the strike marks proved this wasn't a random shot. He said there was no chance that random firing would result in the 3 or 4 shots hitting in such a tight group from a distance of 200 meters.
And the big thing that got everyone's backs up from this report and caused Israel's top human rights group B'Tselem to accuse the United States government of running a whitewash of the murder of Shireen was the fact that the US State Department actually said that they could conclude that it was likely a mistake that Shireen was killed, and that they somehow understood the intent of the individual who killed Shireen Abu Akleh.
The security coordinator also found no reason to believe that it was an intentional killing, but rather the result of tragic circumstances during the course of an IDF-led raid in Jenin.
But the obvious problem with this conclusion of the intent of the soldier, who has not been identified and has not been questioned, is that the United States itself says that it doesn't know who did this. So without knowing the individual who shot and without accusing Israel openly of being implicated in the murder of a US citizen and a journalist clearly marked as such on the field doing their job, it becomes apparent that the US investigation is not exactly serious. And this is something that the family of Shireen Abu Akleh has itself stressed. Although the United States has called for accountability in this case, the report itself undermines the prospects of any sort of accountability, because now Israel has a get out of jail free card that it can use and wave around by saying that the United States somehow came to the conclusion that the killer of Shireen Abu Akleh did not intend to kill Shireen. Now, what is this US reading of intent based upon? Well, the only information that we have out there which suggests that an Israeli soldier was not actually intending to kill Shireen was from the Israeli military itself, which not only lied about the amount of bullets which were fired in the minutes surrounding Shireen Abu Akleh's death, but also lied about there was a gunfight at the exact same time as Shireen's death or in the minutes surrounding, quickly debunked by the Washington Post and the New York Times. Not only that, but the CNN investigation which took place into the incident actually specifically stated that this was a targeted killing according to all of the information which they had access to, and perhaps that this was intentional.
And while there is yet to be an official determination on who killed Abu Akleh, these testimonies and videos are compelling evidence that the Israeli government must answer to.
So if the United States government's report is going off of the information presented by the Israeli military, which was debunked by the New York Times and the Washington Post combined, then it's null and void. It makes no sense. And of course, just stating that you know the intent of the killer without actually naming or knowing the killer makes no sense in of itself. So basically what the United States report reads is that even if an Israeli is found responsible for killing Shireen Abu Akleh, as every single report and international reputable body suggests is the case, there is no intent there. It was an accident. It was a freak accident that just occurred. And why is that the case? Because the United States government in an official report, which they called Independent, has given Israel a get-out-of-jail-free card and also tossed the case over to the Israelis to deal with themselves, which is something that the US State Department did when Shireen Abu Akleh was first killed. In fact, when Ned Price, the spokesperson for the State Department, came out and addressed the incident, he actually stated that they can trust Israel to carry out its own investigation, which was clearly not the case because Israel then, largely for political reasons, rejected even doing its own investigation and putting its own soldiers on trial, as it called it.
The Israeli media report in the Haaretz newspaper is very specific on detail. It says that the Israeli army police are not going to investigate it.
And then later on came out and stated that even in the case that an Israeli soldier had killed Shireen, because there's no evidence to suggest any sort of intent, there was no criminal wrongdoing. And for many people, this is extremely frustrating because this has signaled a green light from the US Biden administration to the Israeli government and military that they can get away with killing a US citizen.